So I was working on the radiator and heater and cooling system again, and I wasn't making a video on that. I've already got almost 4 hours of video for that. There's no way I'm going to post it all. I'm going to do a summary video. But then I moved over here to start working on the Arduino and forgot to make a video, so I thought I'd catch up real quick. What I've got is I've got the Arduino stuff, and I spent a couple hours walking around Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart and Academy, and a couple more hours online. Never could find a box that was the right size that would hold everything and still fit in the spot I've got to put this in. So I decided to make my own box. Just bought a piece of 8x24 sheet metal and 16 gauge. I use 16 gauge because it's thick enough to tap. I cut it, and then I bent up the sides so that it forms kind of a box. I don't have a brake, so I just use some flat bar and some clamps, and I channel locked the flat bar to the clamps and put it on this big piece of stainless I've got here and bent it up. And then I started mounting everything. So I've got terminal strips on the end to bring all the signals in and power in and send them out. This is the Arduino that's going to communicate to the ECU and relay everything to the dash via CAN bus. And this is the Arduino that's going to control the electric parking brakes. That there's just a 12 volt to 9 volt step down, because I don't want to feed the Arduinos directly off of the car. It's supposed to be 12 volts, but sometimes it's 14.5 volts. Plus I'm worried about EMF when I shut things off. So I'm gonna run everything through there. If I melt anything down, I'll just have one piece to replace. I won't have to replace all these components and redo all the soldering. So I got it all bent up, and then I started putting everything in here and tapping it. So everything's put in with 832 bolts. I'm gonna have to order some smaller heads. These heads are too big, but I can get that. So I'm just gonna pull all this stuff out and clean this up and throw it in the powder coating oven and get it powder coated black, and then I'll be able to assemble Arduinos and get them mounted in the car and get them wired up. I guess I'll show real quick where they're gonna mount. I'm gonna take the box with me. Let's see exactly how it's gonna mount. And I'll get this wire installed hopefully in the next week. It's gonna go behind the driver's seat, right here in this little space above the fuel filter. And go right there. It'll be able to easily connect to the ECU, the power and ground, and it won't be too far to get to the rear brakes. So it should be a pretty good spot for it. Well, it's about the only spot that's left to put anything. So get everything pulled out of here, get this powder coated, and I'll get everything mounted, installed in it in the next week, and then I'll get this mounted in the car, and I'll have a permanent communication to the ECU via CAN bus, and I'll also be able to set my parking brake, and I can quit carrying around a big wheel chop everywhere I go. All right, I finished the Arduino box. Last time we looked at this, it was the boards were oriented this way. I rotated them 90 degrees so I could get to the USB ports. So the boards are in there. Everything is internally jumpered to the terminals, and it's mounted. This is behind the driver's seat above the gas tank. It just sticks through and bolts in from that side. And so now I'm working on getting all the wires terminated and routed. So power and ground are coming over here. All the indication lights are coming over here. And then I'll have to run buttons and serial wires up to the front. So that's what I'm working on right now, is getting it all wired up. I've also got to run wires back to the electric brakes. That's my number one goal, is to get the electric brakes hooked up, because I'm tired of having to carry around a rubber chock with me everywhere I go. So number one goal for right now is to get all of the electric brakes working today, and then hopefully get all the wires ran up front, because Monday, and it's Saturday, Monday I should have the unit I ordered to become my dash cluster. I can't obviously mount it in the real dash right now. We kind of talked about that, but I am just going to build some kind of platform, plywood hood, so that I can go ahead and have my gauges because there's a lot of information that stock cluster doesn't give me. So yeah, looking forward to that. Excited about that. So I'm going to try and get all this wired up and loomed. It's still a mess back here. I still got to come back and tape and loom all this, but I don't want to do it until I'm done because I'm afraid I'll wind up undoing something if I don't. So more wiring, yay. It's 50% of a project, it seems. All right, have parking brakes. Have to work on the emergency aspect of it by tying it in with speed, but for right now I have parking brakes. You can kind of see the motors are right there on the back, and so got a button. One side goes to ground, other side snakes its way back to the Arduino. The yellow and blue cables run off to the motors, and so when I turn the button on, can't go anywhere. I can up the amps if it's not holding on a hill or something, but it should be fine. Let it go, and there we go. And we can roll. Not going anywhere again. So, yay, emergency brakes, or parking brakes anyway. So that's an Arduino Uno sitting right there, the small one. The big one is the one that actually talks to the ECU and the dash. The big one will have the speed, and there's a wire between the two of them. I'm just going to go from analog output on one to analog input on the other. And the brake controller will get the speed. And if you're actually moving and hit the button, it won't apply full amp so that you don't lock it up and roll your car or cut donuts or whatever. So it'll actually do a linear interpolation of what the maximum clamping speed should be, or clamping amp should be, based on the speed. So if you were to have a brake failure and hit the button on the electronic brakes, it would slowly get tighter until you came to a stop. So at least that's the goal. I got to work on it. The initial program that I got from the motor controller doesn't support that, so I'm gonna have to build a loop to do that. There'll be some playing with that. There'll be some road testing with that, very slowly on a closed road with nobody on it. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of roads that they haven't built any houses on yet. It's an expanding neighborhood, so I can find one of those and test my electronic brake controller. So things are getting knocked off the list there, so I'm excited. Pretty soon we'll be on to bodywork. What I'm going to do now is try to get the CAN bus hooked up. I'll have a dash, digital dash here Monday, so I want to try and get the serial and SSM hooked up and make sure all that's communicating, so that when that gets here Monday I can test it out. Alright, so this digital dash has actually kind of kicked my butt here. You know, I got the Arduino all working and thought that was kind of the end of it, and then I started trying to figure out how to actually put it in the car, and man, it took me on a whole nother roller coaster. The real kicker was that I decided I wanted to go with a hardwired connection instead of having to rely on USB or wireless for communications between the Arduino and the dash. So I'd always known I wanted to go Android because of how much easier it was to manage automatically starting up and shutting down and launching an app on power up and charge start and all that. So I bought an Android tablet. It was a new one with a USB-C. It was really nice, pretty. I loved it. Plugged in a USB to serial adapter, and I bought one that was made for Android, and I plugged it in and it recognized it, and I hooked it up to my Arduino, and it couldn't read anything. And so I spent a couple of days, almost a week, chasing that down, and I realized that Arduinos don't talk serial like standard serial that a laptop would to a PLC or a modem. They talk a 5-volt version of serial, so you have to have a special serial cable that talks 5 volts. So I was able to buy one of those, this little doohickey here, and I plugged it in via a USB to USB-C adapter, and it was wonderful. Everything started talking, and I was very happy. Then I started working on actually mounting it in the car. I bought some 90-degree adapters. I was going to 3D print a case that it would snap into with the 90-degree USB-C molded into that, so that I could just kind of slide it in and snap it, and then have a bezel that snapped over the top. But what I ran into was that I couldn't get it to charge and talk at the same time, and apparently that's a harder than you would think it is challenge. My laptop is USB-C and it talks to things and charges over a USB-C port, no problem. My iPad Pro does the same thing. I plugged in the USB-C adapter, a dock, a dongle, a 4 USB to USB-C dock. I plugged in the power cord, it started charging. I plugged in a USB stick and it read it. It's like Apple's the most locked down thing on the planet, and if it'll do it, anybody should do it. But apparently it's a really hard thing to get working on Android. A couple of Samsungs work, but not a whole lot of them. I actually wound up going through 4 tablets in 3 weeks. Some of them that were supposed to work, turns out wouldn't work because they didn't have the right firmware version on them, and you couldn't change the firmware version. And then somewhere in doing something completely unrelated, some research on YouTube, I saw a pop-up for a video of Real Dash. It knew I had watched some Real Dash videos at one point, where somebody had put them on put Real Dash on a Android, like a dash cam. It was a dash cam with a LED screen or LCD screen that went with it. And so I started looking at that, and all of those were about the size of a rearview mirror, really skinny and wide. So it would have worked, but a little smaller than I wanted. But then off of that, I kind of realized that in Android, they make Android radios, head units. And I knew that those came in double DIN. So I thought, well, the double DIN one's a little smaller than I wanted, 7 inches, but it's better than a lot of the other options I'm looking at. But then I realized that they've got 10-inch versions of Android head units, and that's what this is. It's an Android head unit. It's a double DIN, but it's a super short profile. But this is running Android 9.0, and it's a head unit. So it's got it's made to power up. I mean, it's got speaker wires. I won't hook the speaker wires up because I'm putting this in my dash. I'm not going to use it as a radio, but it's got speaker wires, 12 plus constant, 12 plus accessory, ground, and illumination. Those are the only wires I'll hook up. So it'll power up when the car powers up. It'll dim and brighten when I turn the headlights on. It's got a USB port. It's actually got a GPS antenna, so it'll be able to do its own GPS because Real Dash supports overlaying your dash into your gauge cluster. So that was great. I bought one of those. They're actually really cheap if you order the one that ships from overseas. I logged into it, put it on the Wi-Fi, downloaded my Real Dash app, hooked up my little adapter. I've got an Arduino just simulating data right now, and it's working great. And I'm just powering it off of a little 12-volt power adapter that goes to a modem or a network switch or something. I don't even know what it came off of. But it's working wonderfully. So I'm going to get this in the car in the next couple of days, and then I'll have my full gauge cluster available to me. I had bought this dash with my old tablet thinking this is the one I would use most of the time, but it's a little narrow. I've got quite a bit of black here at the top and bottom, so I may change my mind and go to a different type gauge cluster or a different dashboard. So I'm still thinking about that, but while I'm troubleshooting, I'm most definitely just going to be using this one that's got all the data on it, because that's most useful when I'm troubleshooting. I'll be able to see temperatures and pressures and flows and everything right here. So yeah, this is great. I wish I'd thought of this before I bought 4 different tablets. Everybody I know is getting a tablet for Father's Day because I got a bunch of extra tablets I don't need anymore. So but real thrilled with this. So gonna get this mounted in the car, and I'm not gonna put the dash in right now. I had another video on that. I'm just gonna build a little plywood hood for it and put it in there, and let's see how it looks. So I've got the Android head unit that I'm going to be using for my gauge cluster, and I'm trying to figure out exactly where I want it to sit. I thought I was going to put it up here above the steering wheel, but if I do that, I'll block half my view of the road. I don't know that I'll pass inspection, and it's probably not safe. Anyway, silly Belle, you're in the video. You're a picture in a frame. So I'm going to try and drop it down inside the hoop here, or at least get most of it inside the hoop. I mean, since it's a digital gauge, I can get it to where I don't have anything right where this passes through. I could, you know, try and get most of the stuff down in here and then put like blinkers or something up here. So I've been working on that. So I've mocked up a little styrofoam hood here just to help me A, understand where it's going to fit, and then B, also help me with making sure I like it here. I want to run this for a couple of months and make sure I like it before I commit to it. So as you can see, this is kind of the view I have. So the top corners show up outside the steering wheel, and then this runs right through the top. So I'll have to arrange all the stuff on the cluster so that it mostly stays here. Maybe I'll get the blinkers right there. I think I can drop it down a little bit more to help. The problem is that this bracket, let me get this pink thing out of the way. This bracket here that actually holds the steering column up, the back of the unit is actually hitting it. So what I'm fixing to do is, I think I can trim it off a little bit without really affecting the strength of it. That's flush. I don't think I'm gonna go all the way flush because I want to leave some curl for strength. So I'm gonna come up just a little bit above that. That's flush and level. So I'll stay flush but not level. I'll give it a slight incline. I'm gonna trim that and then find some shorter bolts so that I can get it down another half an inch. Half an inch is, you know, half of this right here, so I might actually get it to where I can get everything below. So that's what I'm fixing to do. I'm gonna cut that off and then see how low I can drop it. So this is where the dash wound up sitting after I clearanced the bracket here and dropped it down. And then I took one of the displays that I was using, the one that had a single round gauge in it, and I dropped it as far down on the screen as it would go so that it sat right here. This is kind of my view, so it was sitting right here, and then I had coolant and temperatures and boost and fuel kind of off to the sides of it, and then I had the blinkers way up high. And what I found was that I was looking way too far down. Right? Like I had to completely take my eyes off the road. If I wanted to look at my gauge cluster, it was just like sending a text message, right? It was completely eyes off the road, no periphery vision, nothing at all. So I then took it and repositioned it back up here like that. And once again, this is kind of my view. And as you can see, when it's positioned like that, earlier when I was talking about it blocking my entire view was having the full screen above the steering wheel. But when I get just the upper 2/3 of the screen above the steering wheel, you know, the windshield's right there and you're gonna have fritzing on the edge. So I'm probably actually losing no view. And then this is my view. So from here, everything is above the steering wheel. And I can see this really well, but I still, you know, I'm looking at it like this. I've still got periphery of the road. This is, you know, this is probably very acceptable. So I started developing my own custom screen. You can see here, it's still a work in progress. Tachometer on the right, reverse like an Aston Martin, speedometer on the left, normal direction, clockwise. I've got my boost and temperatures here. I actually have to make these a little bigger. They're a little hard to see while driving. I'm going to increase the text size on those. I got my gear. My fuel goes up and down here. Intake air goes up and down here. What I don't have is oil pressure yet. I got to figure out what I'm going to do for oil pressure, where I'm going to put that, because if I make I was thinking I was going to put a third bar here, but if I make these bigger, I won't have room. So I may make a circular gauge right here below the gear. I could make something that's you know, goes this way or this way. So I've got a couple of places. I could also get rid of intake air. That's not really all that important of a measurement for me. So I may actually just replace intake air with oil pressure and let the oil pressure light up and down this way. So I think I'm okay with it here, but I'm going to leave it here while I'm doing body work and test driving it and shaking it down at the track. It'll stay in this little styrofoam container. I was going to make one out of plywood, but the styrofoam hot glue gun together works really well. It's actually very sturdy, so I'm not worried about it. So I'm just going to run it like this, and I got a couple of signals that aren't working. I'm not getting speed, and I don't know if the ECU is not getting it from the transmission or if the dash isn't getting it from the ECU. I got to figure that out. Parking brake is flashing on and off. I think that's actually a bad connection, because the parking brake signal comes from one Arduino to the other, and that connection may just be loose. It shouldn't be flashing like that. Brights work. My blinkers don't quite work. They come on at the same time, and that's a wiring issue, because when I wired up hazards, I just wired each of them to ground, and I didn't think about the fact that that would then pass ground from one to the other whenever I tried to turn on a blinker. So I just got to go put a diode in those two lines where they between the hazard switch and the ground on each one. So other than that, I think everything's working. So that's kind of where the dash is for now. I'm happy with it for now. I'm going to keep playing with the displays to get them to look exactly like I want. I've got another one I'm working on that's it's actually based on the new Mustang Boss. It's blue, very similar though. Gauges on the corners, data in the middle. It's got round gauges in the middle instead of the slider bars like this. But for now, I'm real happy with this. This Android head unit seems to be working great. It automatically launches this app when I turn it on. It comes on and off with the car, so seems like I finally got close to where I need to be on this, at least until it gets time to put it in the real dash and do all the finishing touches.